Hey everybody, this is Perry with Premier Guitar. As we approach 10 years of filming the Rig Rundown with some of the best guitar players and bass players in the world, I thought it'd be great to go through our archives and kind of piece together some really fun moments. In this particular installment, we're going to take a look at 10 of the most iconic basses that we've ever seen on the Rig Rundown. Hope you enjoy this fun little rock and roll history lesson.
And of course now I play Roger Sadowski.
Sure.
You know, I've been playing Sadowskis now for almost 15, 20 years now. You know what I mean? Which I love a lot. You know what I mean?
Like this one right here.
Right, and this is my signature model, the Verdine White model, and it's great. It's really great. Sounds great, and it's for my performing arts center out in Los Angeles and things like that. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with that because, you know, to help young people get back into music, you know what I mean, and kind of take the place of what's been left from schools.
Right.
Because you know, we all grew up, you know, learning music in the schools.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's great. And that's right, I was reading about your philanthropy and how that you're really leading the charge in that.
Absolutely. Keep the fighting, the good fight of this good music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about, so this bass, you can see the influence of like the Fender Jazz and the Precision.
Absolutely.
And you kind of combined.
It's a combo, absolutely, you know, because this is kind of, you know, Roger actually started out, from what I understand, doing, you know, pickups and preamps and basses to, you know, to give them more life.
Sure.
And
kind of hot rodding Fenders, essentially.
Absolutely. That's right. Hot rodding. That's right. Hot rodding. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point in there. Right. The classic car thing.
Yeah.
That's right. Muscle cars. You know, taking those old engines out, putting them, zooping them up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they can just do more than they were originally designed, and that seems like that's what this is.
Absolutely. And
so what's the basic kind of control setup you have?
Well, you have your highs, you have your mids, you have your lows. You can cut actives on or take the actives off.
Oh, wow.
I prefer actives because, of course, playing live to cut through. And actives sound great on record, you know what I mean? And for me, you know, so it just gives a punch for my style of playing. Yes.
And you went with that kind of slimmer jazz style.
Absolutely.
neck.
I sort of kind of picked up from that, you know, because that's how I started. And then that's, you know, I wanted to kind of continue that on. And then Roger, you know, has worked with me for so long, and actually, to be honest, I'm actually a better bass player because I've worked with Roger.
Wow, well, that is, I mean, that's amazing because I mean, you're such an influential player, and so many people have taken their whole thing from what you were doing. Yeah, and you still feel like you're growing.
Absolutely, I'm still growing. And Roger, me getting into the aesthetics of the bass, getting into not only what it does as a player, but what it means. You know, the craftsmanship.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I really got into that part of it.
Cool.
You know, and it really made me actually play better. And then I took a bass lesson in New York a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah,
I met the bass teacher who was freaked out.
No, he wasn't freaked out. No, he was a taskmaster. It's the great Ron Carter. For all of those that, you know, want to Google him and things like that. He played with Miles Davis, all that. So, and I'm originally a classical player.
Sure.
And Ron's jazz and classical. So I went over to the house in Manhattan and took a bass lesson. No, he wasn't freaked out. I was freaked out.
He wasn't intimidated?
No. Ron Carter, you kidding? I was intimidated. And he gave me my instructions, and he sent me on my way. You know?
So you started on upright?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
And I still have one at home.
Wow.
Yeah. And Ron gave me strings so I can restring my upright when I get back to Los Angeles.
That's great. Now, did you ever play upright on any of the Earth, Wind, and Fire songs?
I didn't know, but I did a upright on an artist named Jimmy Vincent, a song called Space Traveler,
cool.
For Caribou Records, and I'm playing upright on that.
Oh, very cool.
I've used it a couple of times on I Write a Song live with EWF, but I haven't in a while, you know. And you have to leave him home now because upright, you know, the freight will kill you.
Oh, right.
The freight will kill you. The freight will kill you.
Yeah. That's like moving a piano.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. That's right. Especially today.
Right. So originally with Sadowski, were you playing just one of his basses, and from there the whole signature thing kind of came about organically?
Yeah, I was playing one of his basses, and my white one, which is I modeled that off,
Right.
this off of that, and it just sounded great. And he came up with the idea, and his son Sam Sadowski, cool cat, Sam's cool, Sam's cool, helped with the idea of talking with Roger about it, and Sam and I met in Paris last year to kind of go over it. And so it just turned out really, really good.
Cool. And is this the prototype or the first
no,
one?
this is one of the first ones. So we have 3 out here, and then I'll be taking it back to LA to the Performing Arts Center, which I have in Los Angeles. And then, but on stage every night I play 2 of them. I play the white one, which I've had since like 1999.
Wow, great.
And then I have a red one, which I just had. I've had it for a couple of years. Huh. So I do the white one is sort of like a Rolls Royce. It just kind of settles in.
Right.
It settles in, and then the red one's like a Ferrari on the back end of that show. When you start getting down to September and Let's Groove and Boogie Wonderland, that bad boy it shifts. Oh. So that they all the one thing about basses, which I did learn, Roger would never let me buy one off the rack. I said, Roger, I want to get one off the rack. He said, no, I'm going to make them. They all have different characteristics.
Sure.
That's what you learn about them. And then when the white one's like really settled, it's like, Rolls Royce, fine wine, it's really settled, it's confident, it's secure. Yeah. That red one, as soon as I got that red one was like jumping out of my hands. and it's like a Ferrari. So I use that one for like, when I really start pushing it,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as you just heard from Kelly, this is actually from the Lollapalooza '94, and we were in all of our gear had been painted gold for the reasons that Kelly explained.
Sure.
And we were doing the rehearsal day in Vegas before the Lollapalooza kicked off, and our sound person said, "You don't have a spare bass, do you?" Because up until then we'd just been touring with one bass.
Really?
Yeah. And it was a Red Music Man, the older version that only had the 2-band EQ.
Sure.
And so in something of an emergency, we went downtown to a music store in Vegas to try and find a Music Man as a backup. And the only one that they had was in natural wood finish, and which I did not particularly like. And the guy at the store said that he knew someone who did auto respraying, and he took it to his friend and they sprayed it gold, including the headstock.
Great, I love that. And it's so cool because you can actually see the ash natural finish underneath it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's great, because usually like a gold finish is so heavy you
Right.
can't see anything. I love that. Wow.
Yeah.
With that was...
So this is '93, which of course is vintage now.
Yeah, isn't that
Even
crazy?
though-
Yeah.
Even though it was bought, I bought it new, it is now a vintage.
Oh, that's great.
But start off with what's Flea bringing out probably number 1?
This is the number 1 bass right here. And this is a
one
very
of the new ones,
beautiful
right?
Fender custom shop made by Jason Smith.
All right.
And it's got the single humbucking pickup. It's got a lane pour pickup in it, and these are great.
Are those the ones that were, I remember the 2012, you said that those were discontinued? Are they started making them?
They started making them again. They're called the Legacy lane pour now.
Okay.
And one of the employees at the shop has picked up business and has got it back up and running again, which I'm very happy about.
I bet.
They're great sounding pickups.
And those are, for people that aren't hip to Lampour, those are active?
They are active pickups, yes.
And talk to us about controls and settings for anyone that didn't watch the 2012 one.
What we've got here is the Aguilar OBP1 preamp in here, which has got boost only EQ. So this is bass and this is treble. We get the setting, we tape it up, we just leave it where it's at. You dial the sound in, and he just uses the volume knob. So it's all pretty simple.
Gotcha.
It's got an 18 volt system, so there are 2 9-volt batteries in there in series. And that's about it for the electronics. It's pretty straightforward and simple.
Is this similar to the ones that people can buy off the rack that I know that he came out the signature jazz bass last?
Very different.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that maybe are different on this that maybe aren't on this?
This has 22 frets.
Okay.
So that's one of the big differences right there. He likes having that extra fret. on there. He
Gotcha.
got used to that with the modulus basses
Yeah.
before this, so we had Fender start doing it.
And this one
they're
is
great.
graphite reinforced
It's got
also?
a graphite reinforcement in there, keeps the neck nice and straight, enables me to get the action down super low
Yeah.
the way he likes it.
People were
Plays
asking,
like a
some
guitar.
guy specifically asked, I can't remember the guy's name in the Facebook post that we put up this morning, but he wanted to know the action at the 12th fret, specifically based on how Flea's playing style.
Usually run about 4/64ths
Okay.
on the bass side, graduating down to maybe a heavy 3/64ths.
Okay.
On the treble side.
Perfect.
And it varies. Sometimes he's feeling a little stronger and
Yeah.
wants it up higher, and other times he wants it down lower. So but that's basically in the ballpark of what we do.
Cool. And to go back to the controls here, is each one kind of the same? Like he kind of hears what he likes and then he's like, okay, let's tape it there? Or is it they about the same?
Pretty much set it up for him and
Oh, okay.
get it dialed in, and he trusts me on that one.
And if he smiles, you know you
So,
did a good job.
yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's dive into the next one. Is this brought out for any special one, like songs or anything before you put it away? Or is this
This
just
is his
kinda-
main bass that he pretty much plays throughout the whole set.
Oh, okay.
And if it doesn't go out of tune, he'll play it all the way down until an alternate tune song
Right on.
comes up.
Killer
So-
Jocko strap
Yeah,
there?
yeah, he loves his Jocko strap.
Perfect. So John, talk to us about your main one here, this beautiful one that's shimmering underneath the gel here.
I've been using PV basses for about 10 years now. The Cirrus, in particular, really works for me. I started using it on a reunion tour. Almost 10 years ago, and it's just become my go-to instrument. And I've had a few of them. PV have been very generous in gifting me different models over the last few years that have I like a bass to have a look, and typically when we put a new album cycle together, I like to have a sort of a signature bass I can use.
Okay.
So this one actually, it was interesting because I needed to do a photo shoot for one of the magazines, and I was in Los Angeles and I didn't have a bass with me, and I called Chris at PV and said, "What have you got? Have you got a Cirrus?" He said, "I've only got one, and but I'll send it to you." And I opened it up and I thought, "Oh my God, that's disgusting! What the hell was he thinking?" And I kind of propped it up in the corner of the room, and I went away, and then I kind of came back around to it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, hang on a second." And if you're familiar with the cover of the new album, Paper Gods, it's got this sky. And I thought, actually, hold on, it kind of looks like the sky on the album cover. And ever since that moment, everybody thinks that I had it done. It was custom built
Like a
to. But yeah, I mean, they update the electronics all the time, So, but essentially, it's been the same feel for the last 10 years. I try using bigger basses. We've got a big bass here. This is about as big as basses get. Are you happy for me to move on?
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you, because I know at one point you had a signature bass, but Bernie was telling me that this is about as off the rack as it gets. You don't really do anything to it?
No.
If I were to buy this, this would be pretty similar to what
The
you're using.
only thing we did, we added this drop down.
Oh, okay.
Recently. No, I'm not a gear freak. Have to say, I'm not super. It doesn't have to be super customized.
That's not a problem. Sure.
That's right. I mean, this is it's pretty parallel the neck. There's not much sort of taper on it towards the nut there, But it's just a beautiful bass to play. They're wonderfully made, the Spectres, and and PJ and Stuart were very kind to do a signature model for me, I mean, geez, it must be 86, something like that. And it was our producer Tom Allen that actually got me onto them.
Oh, really?
I went to see him. He was producing another band for half him. I can't remember who it is, but at Criteria in Miami.
Uh-huh.
And I just walked in.
Huge
The
studio,
band,
yeah.
the band wasn't there, but there in the corner was one of these. It was the NS2,
Yeah.
And I said, "What the hell's this?" Picked it up and started to play with it. I thought, "This is great."
Yeah.
And found the phone number for Stuart. It was in New York at the time. No, wait a minute. No, it wasn't. We got the phone number for Kramer, they were distributing them at the time.
Sure.
And I said, oh, no problem, yeah. And they sent me 2 right there. I thought, well, I haven't got to buy them, which is great.
Well, you're a big deal.
Well, by then we were. I mean, the last bass I had was the Fender, which I had to go out and buy. You know.
Yeah.
Deals, this is wonderful. Well, tell a lie, I did play Hammers for a bit. You know, I didn't get along with Hammers that well. But anyway, and he sent me a couple of basses down, and they were beautiful basses. Small, but really well built and quite heavy for the size. You know. I think it helps with the tone a little bit, you know, keeps it rumbling around a little bit longer. The thing is, with the American-built ones, they started to get expensive, and my 2, the original ones that were within the first couple of hundred or so, started to get very valuable.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, I'm taking them on the road with me.
Yeah.
They're getting knocked around. They're in flight cases and stuff I do with them as well on stage, you know.
Yeah.
So I said to PJ, would you you know, make me? They this time they got a factory in Czechoslovakia as well.
Yeah.
It's like a cheaper model, the same sort of thing, but but done in Czechoslovakia. I said, how about I get the wood bit made in Czechoslovakia, have it shipped back to the States, and you can put all the brass work and the guts and the electronics. He says, yeah, okay. I said, yeah, we'll do that. It won't cost as much for people they're trying to sell them to, you know. And that's where the signature bass came from, basically.
Wow, that's great.
And I almost told him I don't need the back pickup because I never use it. Never. Everything is just like full forward and that's it.
Yeah.
But he put it on anyway, you know.
That's great.
But that's where it came from.
You know, so when you were building or designing your signature, did you make any suggestions about the neck, the feel on that? Or,
I was perfectly happy with the NS2.
As it came out?
Perfectly happy with it.
And you played that for quite a while before you actually
that's right,
did your SIG.
We're talking 10 years maybe, you know, that I played.
Big years.
Yeah,
that's
right, all through the 80s. Yeah, that's right. And like I say, it came about that they agreed to do it. And then I've never really got along with being an old fart, if I can say. You know, I'm very, very set in my ways.
Yeah.
I'm very used to 4 strings, the string spacing and all the rest of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of 5 strings over the years, of which Hamer was one, and Spectre were kind enough to send me a couple of theirs. But it just felt awkward.
Sure.
And when you've been doing something for 40 odd years, you know. So I decided to just put the top 4 strings of a 5-string set onto a 4-string bass.
Great.
And do it that way. And if I need to go higher, I just go a little bit further up the neck.
Sure, makes perfect sense.
It does, absolutely.
So essentially, you just buy a 5-string set. Stig, your guy, wires it up, and I guess you probably have to increase the nut size.
The gaps in here and things, but you know, where the string goes through on the tailpiece there.
And do you just switch according to the song?
Yeah, just switch over. Yeah.
So if you need that low B, you got
sometimes if I don't need the higher, I'll just keep the 5 on for a while. What I call the 5. You know,
the
5 tuning, I'll just keep that on.
Yeah.
It helps with running off stage every 2 songs or so.
Sure. Yeah, and I like the fact that you kept the price of your signature down because I mean, you know, because you've got so many fans that like want to buy that instrument and
it knocks a couple of grand off the price. You know?
That's huge.
It's they're really just as good as, I shouldn't say this, I suppose. They're just as good as the American ones. They really are.
Yeah.
But you know, with labour costs what they are, I suppose in Czechoslovakia, or what they used to be, like they can do it a bit cheaper over there. You know.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
And of course, it's not so. They're hand built over here, you know.
Sure.
Where in Czechoslovakia.
Very labor intensive here.
Yes.
Yeah. So it totally makes sense. Now, do they only come in black? Because I've only seen these in black.
Yeah, mine do.
That's good, man. What's more Judas Priest than that? Yeah. And you've had, if not this exact bass, something very close to this with you this whole ride, right?
Pretty much. When we first started the band, I was still using my P bass, and I had a Yamaha BB3000 that they had made for me. And it's a great bass, but its body shape was a little different, so it was a little wider here, so it felt funny.
Right.
My whole life was on a P bass.
Yeah.
And it felt, you know, when I feel it it feels right. You
Sure,
know? And I know where the volume knob is at all times. I don't have to look. I can always grab.
Yeah.
It's automatic. So we tried a couple other things, but then we finally came up with this about 89 or 90. Mm-hmm. And then, and right away it was playable.
Yeah.
A lot of times I have to do, no matter what it is, I got to do a lot of tweaking.
Right.
But Yamaha, they got quite an amazing operation in Japan. Their quality control is second to none. And they just made the version 1 was really cool. The biggest problem I had with the P-Bass, and it's an odd problem to have, and it's not really a problem of the bass, it's a problem of me and the way I play, is when I do like a bendy thing, the neck would shift in the socket.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I'd have to really torque down the screws and jam shims in there to hold it steady on the P-Bass, because there's a little gap in the screws that go through the wood from the back plate. So one of my main concerns was that neck to body joint really being solid. So on the version 1, they had 2 little metal pieces, and it was bolted in from the back, and a tongue went way deep underneath the bass here, way on the inside, so it wouldn't move. It can't move. It's solidly in there. The next version, they made it all wood. There was a metal piece that was attached to the wood, and then on this version, it's all wood again. And now they also have 2 other holes, which actually reach in, grab the neck. That's how far in the neck goes.
Wow.
Grabs the neck and pulls it into the socket. So it is.
That's not going anywhere.
It ain't going anywhere.
It'll break before it.
It will.
It'll break up here before that moves.
I haven't broken one yet, so the night is young, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's still time.
Yeah.
Great.
So and now they're doing artificial aging of the wood. I actually saw the process. A big block of wood goes into this machine. They hired a bunch of biologists and engineers and spent literally millions of dollars researching wood and the aging process. And it's not just for my bass, though. They do that to their piano boards, acoustic instruments, and all that. Now they're doing it also to the necks. They're aging the necks also, not on this particular bass, but it's quite a process. And I guess the short version is sap crystallizes as it gets older. So now they can do that.
Wow.
Crystallize it so that it's like it's been around for 20 or 30 years.
Wow, that's so brand new vintage kind of vibe.
Exactly. So, and they also do the vibration thing where they put the thing on a vibrator, vibrating table to vibrate, to mimic being played for years, which seems to have an effect as well. So
very cool.
So a lot went into it.
Yeah.
And
cool. And your pickups, tell me about these.
Well, these were supposed to be DiMarzios, but unfortunately, a production schedule error. We didn't get the DiMarzios in time. So these are Yamahas. Larry's working on a replacement for this now.
Yeah, I know you're a long-time DiMarzio guy.
Yeah, Larry's a dear friend of mine. I love his stuff.
He's amazing.
Yeah, and I don't ever have to, I can clip almost any input with this bass. It'll clip, and there's no battery in it. It's not active. So it really has a lot of really solid output, which helps. The more you get, for me, the better. Now these are an old version of his pickups I encased in epoxy myself.
Oh, really?
Normally we do it at Yamaha with a special mold in his own right, but I had a whole bunch of older ones laying around, so I threw these on this bass, and they're just basically mushed epoxy and then shaved back down to the size of the pickup, and then they're arched a little bit, because as you notice, this pickup, when it comes up, its edge would hit the A string, and this edge would hit the D string. So I have to chamfer, I think that's the word, take it down a little bit so it doesn't, and then make the rest kind of a little bit more smooth than just sharp edges.
And you did that yourself?
Yeah.
Very
I've done it
cool.
myself. I do almost all the work on my bass other than refretting.
Yeah.
You know, everything else I can do pretty much, and I have done. But I usually try to avoid it because I do a slop job. I'll give the guys at Yamaha, please do this correctly.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I bet they're happy to do it, to take it out of your hands.
They're wonderful, yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about your signal flow. You're going out of here with two wireless.
Yeah, and the 2 output, if I may bring it up again, it's when I initially did it, I did it because I love the sound of the Gibson EBO bass and that giant neck position pickup.
Right.
But I also love the sound of the Fender, and I had a Fender bass, and there was room, a big blank spot here, so I wrote to Gibson, got a pickup, chiseled a hole in the thing, put it in there. Didn't know how to wire both to one output. So it came with its own already pre-wired volume and tone, and I think there's also there wasn't a switch on the EBO and the Rivoli bass. There's a little switch, which is a bright switch. Initially, it didn't have that. When some guy rewired it for me, I noticed, hey, it's brighter. How come? Oh, it's supposed to be. Oh, could you put a switch on it? I go, that's what that switch was for.
Cool.
So, and the P bass initially had a volume and tone. I never used the tone, and then I read somewhere if you take it off, it's a little hotter, so I did. This actually has a blower switch, which will open it right up and bypass the tone.
Wow.
Not play. I don't notice a huge difference with that. It's just kind of an experimental thing on this bass. I may go back to the other way. So that original dual output, I didn't use a stereo plug because if you're in Ithaca, New York, and it's 11 o'clock at night in 1974, and you break your stereo cord, you're not going to find another one, but you will find a mono chord.
Yeah.
So it was just easier that way to maintain. And the stereo chords, because there's extra apparatus in there, they tend to fall apart easier.
Sure.
Just not as solid. So I just use 2 mono chords out.
Bulletproof.
And if I use just this bass just on anything, I'll just use just this pickup out, and I'll eliminate that. It's because it's just basically a P bass sound. And but live, I'll add the extra one through its own amp. And Rickenbacker did the Rico sound. I wasn't aware of it at the time. All the early alembic basses were dual output. Each pickup had its own output, all of them.
Cool.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I read, I hope this is true, John Paul Jones split his jazz pickups into 2 amps. I think John Entwistle did it also. So it's not an uncommon solution for the idea that in PA you've got woofers and tweeters, you separate sounds out, send them to different transducers, it's going to be a clearer thing. Now, it isn't necessarily that I'm getting a clearer sound, but I am delegating certain frequencies to certain speakers so they don't have to work quite as hard.
If you've seen the band live or seen any of their videos, you probably recognize this bass with this gentleman. Would you care to talk to us about it?
This is a Gibson Grabber.
How did you score this beauty?
Well, the very first bass I had was a Grabber. And I recorded the first Dinosaur record on a Grabber and then half the second. So a lot of what people can think is a Rickenbacker on those records is actually the Grabber. But I sold my Grabber back in the day and I bought or traded it for a Rickenbacker, and then I don't know, we did these shows where we played our full first record last year or year before, December 2015, and we thought, for authenticity's sake, I would get a Grabber to play the shows, and I borrowed one from this guy in East Hampton, Massachusetts. Runs a shop there called the Luthier's Co-op, and he let me borrow this, and it just was so awesome that I traded him then this Fender bass that I had for this. So it's just a clean trade. It was great.
Trading's rad.
Trading is really awesome.
So that's when you walk away from the deal thinking like, yeah, I got the better
deal. I got
deal.
really excited. That rarely happens. I'm a terrible deal maker. I'm not much of a gear guy. So it felt like it was pretty lucky. And then, but I've been playing the.
Since you've gotten it from.
I've done all of this in the last year. This is all just really.
Because you used to play guitar in a
I started playing
hardcore band.
Yeah, really, I had real thrash.
So you have like that.
Yeah, I love strumming. I use my wrist a lot.
And it was funny, when we were coming up here, Perry asked you, because one of our buddies has a Grabber, and we're like, he's like, oh, Freddie likes it because you can move the pickup. But you say it doesn't matter.
I mean, I don't know whether it's because it's just going through this array of whatever. If there's a difference, it's subtle.
Yeah. And your guys' sound isn't subtle.
No, we're not. No, we're not subtle.
But for bass strings, what do you use?
For a while, I used to use really heavy strings, and that was kind of a thing that I did. And kind of like Jay, if you see the action on his guitars, they're really high. And I generally really liked heavy strings, and also really high action. But now I just do generic or regular set, because I guess it's a little more boingy. And the way that this bass sounds this bass just has a really good resonance to it, and it's kind of it seems like it's unusually good for a Grabber, so I just use standard strings.
Say about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you said this is a 70?
It's got to be something. I don't know.
Yeah, 70-something.
70 something.
Tell us a little bit about your basses as well.
Well, the basses I got, gentlemen, are Spectre basses.
And you've been playing this since '86.
This one I got in 1987.
Wow.
I got this.
There's high miles on that.
I was, you know what happened is this, man. You spend your whole life coming up, you try to do stuff, you play with certain bands. It's not till you get put on playing with somebody famous, then everybody wants to know who you are.
And it's Jeff Beck,
You know what I
right?
mean? Jeff Beck was that gateway for me. Right. You know what I mean? Because once I played with Jeff Beck, hey, Doug, how you doing? Hey, come on over, you mind? Okay. Now, prior to that, I couldn't get any mint-flavored toothpicks in the restaurant. You know what I mean? But that's the nature of the business that we're in. Right. So remember, believe in everybody, not just the elite that you see all the time. I'm your classic underdog. You ain't gonna see me maybe you'll see me on the cover of these magazines, but not many more. I'm probably making a repeat on here before I got on any of the other ones, but it's all good because I play from the heart, and I'm not a music whore. I'm not like some cat that's just trying to get gear to play it and go to NAMM and pick stuff up. I play it because I like it and I'd rather pay for it so that there's no other stuff going on the side if that happens. So that's how I deal with it.
Well, what's your
Spectre bass, 1987. Backstory of this was I happened my guitar tech at the time, Pierre de Beaupart, who now techs, he's really good. He works with Keith Richards now. I'm dropping names, but I've got Billy here, so I can't nothing bigger than him. But anyway, he introduced me to the guys over at Kramer. And at that time, Kramer had acquired Spectre. I was a fan of Spectre basses. The bass player in the group called Cameo, a bass player named Aaron Mills, was the first person I saw use a Spectre bass when I was out on the road with the Sugar Hill Gang in 1979. We became friends. His bass was made in Brooklyn, and I always had my eye on it, but my wallet did not have my eye on. My wallet was, it ran away every time I looked trying to buy that bass. Gone. And then I had the opportunity to get one, and what happened was when Stuart Spector was somebody's interested in getting to use one of his products, he had a loaner bass. All right. So I got the loaner bass. It was a black bass. It went to everybody. So if you get the loaner bass, play it. If you liked it, then they made a bass for you. But you gave the loaner bass back. Right. That's how that went down. So the necks were too thick for me personally, and I'm a jazz bass player, like Uncle Billy. And so I had him shave the neck down real thin. It's Doug Wimbish profile. Look at that. Look at that. Look at all those collard greens taken off that neck right there. So I had him shave it down, and I had him shave the body down smaller as well. It wasn't intentional. It was just that we just happened to be at the moment at the time. And Stuart kept saying, I don't know, Doug, if it's going to work. I'm like, I felt like Scotty on Star Trek. Push it a little bit longer, Captain. We'll get the lithium crystals. I can't go any farther. But he did. And I got this bass, and I was blessed to have it. That's numero uno. Then followed by, I needed a fifth string, and I never had one before. I had one, but it wasn't that great. So then I happened to catch him at the right time again. He was just starting to make 5-string basses, that year. So I managed to get this 5-string bass from him. Same vibe. I think I had him shave it down a little bit because these bodies are different. And these two have been my go-to bass. That's the color of it now. This is the color of it when I got it.
Oh. Wow. High miles.
High miles.
Yeah.
The neck was all blue. As you can see, this has got some Battlestar Galactica stuff going on. But between a great guitar player and his band Sworn Enemy and Jeff, he looks after me. He's here. He's on loan from the community, but he looks after me and tightens it up. And Jimmy and all the guys over at Spectre, I kind of take it up there for its shape up and every now and then. But these are my go-to basses. These are the ones that I kind of been using over the last few years.
These two.
So this is the one. This is the bass that you have done a million amazing things with from the 60s to now, or
little baby. I've had her since 1964, and we became famous together.
So Rickenbacker 4001 from 64, you said?
Yeah, they had a different name for it because it was bought in England. They gave it a different model number, but it's basically a 4001. Yeah, if I bought it in America, it would have been called that. Yeah.
What is still stock on it? What has changed over the years? Probably a million things have many times, huh?
Well, what happened? originally it was one of the classic Rickenbacker red sunburst color, and then around the Flower Power period in the 60s, in my previous band, Yes, The Sin, I put this wallpaper on it, or that had flowers on it, and then, of course, after a while I got bored with that, so I took it to this guitar maker, Sam Lee, our guitar repair guy in London, and he shaved it all off, and in the process of removing that stuff, he shaved some of the wood down, so it became a little bit lighter, I guess, than the other basses. And then, lo and behold, of course, I went and put some silver sticky paper all over it, so it was all silver and reflective. And when I got bored with that, I took it back to this guy again, and once again he had to take all this stuff off of it and shave it down again, and then he did this cream lacquer, and he asked me, please don't do it anymore. So I didn't. So it's been this cream color for about 45 years now. But in the process, of course, of all that happening, the neck and the body lost quite a bit of wood weight, and so it became, less. Well, I guess it's just lighter than the regular stock Ricks, and possibly because of that, it has the sound it has, which is kind of always been a lot brighter than the other stock models and other Rickenbackers I've had since that the company have let me have, and don't quite ever sound like this one. Plus the fact this back pickup was always never very good, which has got something to do with it. It has a very low output, very tinny sound.
And it's the same pickup from all this time.
Yeah, it's the same pickup. Yeah. So it's got its own characteristics. But as I said, I grew up with this bass, and we made a lot of hits together.
That's for sure. Now, way back in the 60s, did you play flat wounds on it ever, or have you always used round wounds?
No, I always started off with round wounds. I was even using round wounds on basses I had prior to this, which was, basses. I think I just had an Italian Futurama bass guitar, which cost about $30 or something before this. But no, I got into the round wound strings mainly because of John Entwistle, I guess. With The Who, he pioneered them, and I liked the sound, and so I went with them.
Now, before we move on to the other basses in your boat, have you changed the wiring at all in this? Or?
I very early in the 70s, I wired the pickup so they came out to a stereo jack, so that the treble pickup goes to the tip of the stereo, and the bass pickup goes to the sleeve, and the reason why I did that was not because I wanted to play in stereo, was because I wanted to route certain effects not through both pickups, so that when I use the bass pickup, for instance, I only use my fuzz tone on the bass pickup. It wouldn't sound good with the treble pickup, so with the course also of evolving, my sort of switching system, which is now I'm on about the 7th upgrade here, different from the very first one I had. But over the years, they haven't necessarily improved. Actually, the one I had in the 80s was actually the best, quietest one.
And you're still using those stereo outputs the same way you did way back when you had it done.
It's to wire things differently through the different effects, and sometimes the treble pickup goes to not the bass.
Okay, great.
Well, when I first started playing bass, I played a Music Man Stingray, and that was like the bass that I learned on. It's sort of home bass, if you will.
Yeah.
And I recorded the first Rage record with a Music Man Stingray, and then somewhere along the line, I got a backup bass. Like when we first started, I had one bass, and then I got a backup, and it never sounded quite the same as the one that I used most often, which was like a natural wood grain Stingray. And it always kind of bummed me out whenever a string broke that I would have to get this other one, the black one, and it didn't sound the same. And
right.
It almost required redialing in the amp differently to get it to sound kind of similar, and that was a problem. And so somewhere along the line, I kind of switched over to Fender, and they came at me like in the 90s and said, hey, you want to Fender jazz bass, and I was like, all right, cool, you know. And I hadn't really played I had a jazz bass when I was younger, but I didn't put a lot of time on it. And I got a jazz bass and made some adjustments. So I have I'm into like a thumb rest, so I put like a thumb rest on it and kind of got it to where it felt good, and then never looked back and rocked the jazz bass all through the rest of Rage and into the beginning of Audio Slave. And then Lakeland is another bass company that came at me, and they said, hey, would you be willing to try one of our basses? And I did, and what's interesting is their basses are sort of like a hybrid of a Music Man and a jazz bass, in that they string through body like a Music Man, and they move the pickups a little closer together than a standard jazz bass, and it kind of picked up where the Music Man Stingray pickup is, and it kind of got into more of that tone. And I'm trying to think of what else they did. They have the tapered tuning keys and different things that are kind of like a Music Man, even though they kind of look like jazz basses, and they feel like jazz basses. So I played those for many, many years after, for 7 or 8 years. And then here recently, Brian Ball from Ernie Ball came at me and said, hey, you want to try out a Music Man, a new Music Man? And I was like, sure. So I got one, and I'm a big acoustic electric guy. Like when I'm at home, I don't really play through an amp. I just play acoustic, just that way. And I played it, and I was blown away. I mean, I really, there's one thing about Fender and even Lakeland was there's sometimes some sharp edges on pickups that I would always take pickups out and kind of soften the edges so there's not anything sharp that hurts my hands or anything. And these basses are just so smooth and so soft, the feel of them, everything. And I love this spot, this sort of feels like home base, this Music Man spot right there between the screws. And I don't know, man, they're great. They switched over to a 6-bolt neck. The truss rod adjustment's real easy. You just stick like an Allen key in there and you can turn it like that, as opposed to like trying to ram an Allen wrench inside there and jacking up your pick guard or whatever. And these are not the string through body, though. These that I use for the Prophets are all string through with the standard like Music Man old school bridge with the mutes on it and that sort of thing. And so I love these basses. I love the way they feel, and I love this 2 pickup Music Man. I'd never used that before, and so this is the first time I ever tried using what they call the Music Man HH. And so you can adjust between just this right here, or if you go here, it's this and this. If you go here, it's both pickups. If you go here, it's just this. If you go here, it's just this right here.
Oh, that's great.
It's pretty neat. I just keep it on the middle.
That's where you live for the most part?
Yeah, I'm just in the middle. I haven't even really delved into it too much.
So is it all stock?
It is all stock outside of this thumb rest, and that's it, and that's it's just great. A beautiful instrument, and they do these necks on it that I love.
There's like no finish on it, like an oil finish.
This is awesome. This is what they call roasted maple.
Yeah.
And they take a chunk of maple and they put it in an oven and cook it, so it like literally removes all the moisture and anything like that, and then the wood takes whatever shape that it would take once the moisture's gone, and then they make the neck. And it feels so good. It's so nice. And with other unfinished necks, you sweat on it, get into like a moisture rich environment, and you can start to feel the grain a little bit, and then you might have to go back over it and smooth it out with some steel wool or something like that. But these things are like, they're not finished, but they almost feel like they have a finish on them, and they're just beautiful. And this color is all the way through the wood, so it's not like it's ever going to wear off. And
that's great.
It's not stained or anything like that. It's just the way it looks, and
it's
I
like,
love these basses, man. Love them. And then the black hardware, like this is something I never thought. I've always been like a sort of like a chrome hardware, sort of classic, vintage looking bass guy, but like I'm digging this right here with the black hardware, and this one strings through body. It's an unbelievable.
Do you feel a lot of a difference between the top loader and the string through the body?
I do. I think string through the body it's better. It resonates more. I just think it's better. I feel it more in the instrument. I really like a heavy bass, and so I'm telling you, like, just to have a solid string through body, super heavy chunk of ash with a nice maple neck, it's like a really solid connection, and I feel it and I enjoy it now.
You almost kind of feel it in your body when you're playing it.
Yeah,
You know? It's
yeah.
like they resonate right.
It
into
really
you.
does. I mean, and then the other thing about these basses that I dig is they have this intonated nut.
Oh, really?
Which is badass, man. And it's like the nut is, you can see it's angled.
Oh, okay.
It's not a straight nut like most guitars and basses.
wow.
This has got an intonation to it, so it really affects the intonation of the string from, like, say, the 5th fret up. You know, like, it's just perfect. There's
That's
no
all the
dead
money
spots,
notes,
nothing.
yeah.
You know, it's like incredible, really incredible instruments. And I can't tell you how cool that it was to get back on these, and how cool that they've been. You know, they've just been, like, I can't believe I have this many. I'm embarrassed that I have this many basses on tour. I really am. Normally,
Well, you're a big deal.
I don't feel like I'm a big deal, but, like, obviously something's going on, and like in the past, it's always been like 4 basses. You know, bass for drop D tuning and a backup, a bass in E and a backup, and now here I am with 10 basses.
That's great.